So, any other comments about this in particular? Yeah,
I was just gonna say that, my husband does this to me all the time.
of course.
But I don't think of it as devil's advocate, I just think of it as, I don't have all the answers to his questions. So every time I wanna like propose something or suggest something, like, I try to think of all the questions he's gonna ask, so
Sure.
that I have that information, cause what inevitably happens is I'm like, oh crap, I don't know, I'll go find out, I'll be back.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things when you're trained to know that you're going to be confronted with devil's advocate. That's one of the things that you can do. On the other hand, it's also, you ask him to play angel's advocate with you, that you want to glean the best of his thinking on something, to build it before he pokes holes in it. It will be hard for him, but it's going to be a new skill for him. So I encourage you to try it.
Okay.
You'll like it.
I think I will.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now is just take a few minutes. Any other comments or questions about this? Because I want to take a few minutes to read some examples of people who have used these differences for innovating. Let me just put them up here. Now this, I don't know if you consider productivity innovation, but I think it does. This is a woman who, one of my graduate students, who had just been stymied by the person who was supposed to be the lead on a project, who was the lead on the project, and told her what to do and then left her without information. It's like, I know that going into a cave and doing things by ourselves is often the way things are done, but for a relational person, it was like being imprisoned by not having information. So the whole class coached her in what to do, because she's a high context person. She wanted all this information and was just stopped when her lead only gave her just a few piecemeal pieces. So this is what she writes. After discussing my grinding to a halt situation with a class last week, I took the suggestions made to heart and applied them at work this past week. On Monday morning, I carefully prioritized the information necessary and important to me in gaining the big picture perspective of the program. I then formulated that information into a clear, concise, and bulleted list, and had another male colleague, also an individualistic thinker, review it, meaning also like her lead. After incorporating a few suggestions from him, I emailed the list to Robert, saying I really felt I could take off on this project if I just had these details. Robert responded to the email on Tuesday and had answered all of my questions. Though I still didn't feel I had a total grasp on the program, I at least had other resources to connect with. I set up a virtual meeting with a counterpart in Denver who, lo and behold, was a relational thinker just like me. We spent the first part of the meeting developing a rapport, then discussed the overall goal of the program. After 3 hours of meeting, now this was heaven to her, would have been hell for Robert, right? And going over the program in depth, I felt I had the tools and information necessary to get started. Thursday and Friday of this week were perhaps the most productive work days I have had in a long time. I was able to complete both a schedule and a preliminary materials and process list in these 2 days. This is a task that I had previously spent a week and a half on and had made no progress. I feel that after I was able to recognize the different ways in which Robert and I think, I was able to actually use our differences to my advantage. When I approached Robert from his style of thinking, he was able to respond quickly and helpfully despite his being extraordinarily busy. Also, by being forced to think in an individualistic manner, I was able to really organize and prioritize my thoughts, which I normally don't do a very good job of during the beginning phases of the program. The bonus result of this situation is that when Robert gave me another contact, I found out the contact has a similar style to me. We seem to work really well together, so I now have even more confidence that this program will be a success. He's working with now. While taking this class, pages 15 and 16, which describe the high and low context and monochronic and polychromatic descriptions, that's high and low context as we talked about it, and doing one thing at a time or many things at once. That's not all in your handout, all the information he had. Said these descriptions really stood out in my mind. I was able to see that this chart can help me categorize each of my cross-functional team members for the benefit of the project and team. I used the high and low context scale of nationalities diagram along with the context description and matched most of my cross-functional group in each category. Now everyone matched up directly, not everyone matched up directly as either a low or a high context culture, but it was an excellent guideline and also a reference. After the course, I ended up tagging each member of my team as either more or less high or low context to do a simple experiment. I didn't let my team members know I was experimenting, but I ended up changing the way I run meetings and action item tracking to see how it would work out. With the new understanding of the different context cultures, I decided to change my own context. I tend to be more high context in nature. I shifted my own context qualities to be more low context. This is actually a reversal. He was more low context and he shifted to high context. By exploring more of a background or the reason why I would come to certain conclusions, which I didn't do previously. I also had more of a monochronic personality, which is doing one thing at a time. So I usually wanted to group the group to focus and concentrate on one thing at a time. I was very scheduled and deadline oriented. I ended up changing by giving team members the option to multitask on many action items and give them more flexibility to change their plans and decision making as long as it was benefiting the program in general. What I found was that by giving folks these choices, certain individuals really excelled at their job. I also noticed some folks that didn't speak up before tend to participate more in the group or conference call environment. For the folks that didn't do as well with the new approach, I changed something else as well. I used to publish meeting minutes with action items on an Excel spreadsheet and then send them out weekly. I started using SharePoint for my projects. SharePoint is a new application that my company is starting to use. SharePoint is essentially a project web page that is accessible to everyone on the group. It allows me and everyone in my group to post and comment on every aspect of the project. I could also upload all the information that is related to my program or project to this website. And what I discovered is that it was the perfect medium that could be used for folks that are both low context and high context. It appealed to both the low and high context people. For the folks that like information in segments or categories, this site was very much set up in that manner, where the data was stored in directories and subclasses. And for folks that were more high context, they liked how you can comment and put your input in all or certain topics they might have a suggestion or recommendation for. And the site tells you how the topics are already inputted. Comments can be searched and found for someone else that might have the same question at a later date. The site can direct you directly to that particular subject expert instead of always going to me, the project manager. This is really a game changer, since if we're not only communicating verbally by email or voicemail, but with this tool people can post questions, get them answered, all on the same site at different times around the world. He mentions about, obviously, there are different times. Essentially, the SharePoint tool can accommodate individual and relational traits. So he goes on into some other things as well, but thank you. So, for me, that was really innovative. Increasing productivity, innovating in how we could be with his team, and essentially, raising his profile as a leader, as well as including and being able to utilize the competencies of his team at a much higher level. Okay, question, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, the when cultures collide slide, and I'm not sure exactly how I can use that in relation to the context. Can you get a little definition?
Well, actually, the linear active is, which is down in the left-hand corner, is is low context. The other two are both high context. If you think about Mexico, I lived in Mexico for a while, there was even a joke about, oh, Americans, they can say it in one paragraph and we need 3 pages to express themselves. And likewise, and you may, you're from an Asian culture at some point, so you may not identify it being as high context, but usually Asian cultures are very high context as well. And this is where I often, one other graph that I like to draw out is to be able to understand that, as I get this, this goes back to 2s rather than 3s, but still, you can have an individualistic culture like the US as a prevailing culture, and then you have the men's culture, which is more individualistic, and the women's culture, which is more relational. And then you have an example like Japan, which is more relational, or India, or Mexico. Let's put Mexico or India. And then there are men and women underneath, and so they each take on a different character or an expression. And you can talk about, we'll probably have to talk about this more afterwards, but for instance, in India, when they do interviews for people, they often put people in groups. The collective, how you act in groups is valued. So it's more of a collectivist culture. Although there's still a strata, and these are tightly woven cultures, the relational cultures, where caste systems are more likely to be found. So it doesn't mean it's a good culture for women, but there is that relational quality to it. So we can talk more about it, but again, you probably get a lot out of the book itself. Yes?
I just wanted to add to his comment, and that came to my mind too, that it can come in pretty handy when you're working with global teams, because we recently had a very live example of how American engineers were trying to work with Indian teams, Indian engineers, and both were frustrated, and both were saying, oh my God, I'm talking to a dumb guy on the other end, and they were
Thank you
both
for
saying
your honesty. Absolutely. Frustration. Huh?
And it was just that the fact that they weren't able to actually even bridge that communication was so hard. And I was seeing both sides, because I understand where Indian guy was coming from, and I know what my American colleague is struggling with, and I could see that, but I wasn't going to just jump in and patch it up, but I could see that.
But see, now I would hope that you have a little bit more language to be able to use, to be able to make a difference in that situation. That's great. That's great.
That's one of the things that they said, that outsourcing is not necessarily a good idea either, because the lack of or the increase of bad productivity, because it's not just the communication, it's doing the wrong thing because of the communication.
Yeah, well, except that there's that investment to make
That's right.
in the communication, and then you get innovation from differences rather than groupthink. So, I'm an advocate of it, and the students that I have from around the world have just really sold me on it, and they're, how they expand it really are. I have these understandings. So any other questions? Well, let's take afterwards, but thank you very much for being here. It was a pleasure.